Today, on this episode of The Crossover, we will be discussing Razor 3, A Night Stalker's Wars, with Special Operations Pilot, Master Aviator, and best-selling author Alan Mack. Hear firsthand behind-the-scenes experiences involving the hunt for Usama Bin Laden at Tora Bora and lone survivor rescue from the Kunar Valley. Much more on this episode of The Crossover. Good afternoon, everyone. On this Veterans Day, we got a special interview with Alan Mack, Special Ops Warrior. Hey, Alan, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good, man. Listen, thanks for joining us, and obviously, congratulations on Veterans Day. It's an honor to speak to you.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure to be here.
Oh, awesome. Well, so I'll just do a brief introduction just while everyone's logging on here. But like I said, it is Veterans Day, as everyone knows, and we have the pleasure of speaking with Alan Mack, who is a Special Ops Warrior. You'll hear all about it. As background, Alan is an MH-47 pilot and master aviator with a decorated military career. His story centers around his involvement with Task Force Dagger, a special ops unit formed after 9/11, where he piloted MH-47 helicopters and armed MH-60s. His experiences were unreal, including the hunt for Usama Bin Laden at Tora Bora, his shootdown during Operation Anaconda, and rescuing the lone survivor from the Kunar Valley. Alan's awards include a Legion of Merit, 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 3 Bronze Star Medals, 3 Service Medals, 10 Air Medals, and 1 Valor Device, Combat Action Badge, and an Army Broken Wing Award. So amazing career, simply incredible. And here today to discuss his best-selling book, Razor 3, A Night Stalker's War. Alan, really a pleasure to have you on. Looking forward to chatting with you.
Oh, it is my pleasure, honestly.
Well, wonderful. Let's start with the beginning. Just tell us a little bit about what it means to be a master aviator and what that entails.
All right, so a master aviator in the U.S. Army is 15 years of rated service, meaning you've gone to flight school and then stayed in the aircraft for 15 years, and 2,000 hours of flight time.
Wow. Okay. That's unbelievable. At what stage can you start your training? Is it after high school, college?
Well, when I joined, the Army had this program, high school to flight school, which I did not get to do, but that was one of the ways you could get in. Typically, I mean, you can come off the street. It's a little bit more difficult than doing it from within the Army. I did 9 years enlisted as an aircraft mechanic, and then I applied for flight school and was accepted, and it was about a year-long training for that.
And what inspired you to do that? Was there a defining moment, or has this something you had always wanted to do during your life?
No, I've always wanted to do this. When I was growing up, the Vietnam War was going on, and you didn't have the internet or any of that stuff, but you had the 6 o'clock news. And just about every night, in the late 60s, early 70s, you saw helicopters on the news, and I was like, I want to do that. And I tried to do the high school to flight school routine. I went in, I was a senior in high school. I was going to go to college. I had a roommate picked out and everything, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to party the whole time. That's not going to work. So I thought I needed to mature a little bit, and I thought the Army would be the way. And I thought, I could go fly helicopters. And the recruiter said, well, listen, you pump the brakes there, kid. We'll it's not that easy to get in off the street. He said, why don't you join Army Aviation as a mechanic? You get to learn a lot of the environment and the culture, and then you put in for flight school. And then, that's a recruiter technique, but it was true, and it was very helpful for me.
Now tell us, I mean, when you say helicopter, people think of regular helicopters, but you're talking about the top end, most technologically advanced helicopters in the world. Tell us a little bit about the choppers that you flew.
Yeah, the MH-47 Echo and Golf are the 2 airframes that I flew in the Special Operations Unit. I think they run about $62 million a copy, which is more expensive than a fighter jet in most. Wow. F-18 anyway. Had about a 5.5 hour fuel capacity with air refueling, and as a matter of fact, I'm gonna cover my book. This is what it looks like, right? So The tandem rotor makes it very stable and very fast. This is one of the fastest helicopters in the world. Right here's an air refueling probe.
How fast does it go?
It'll do 170 knots, so it's just about 200 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. And it also had, it was equipped with a terrain following radar, which was unique to the aircraft. So I could fly in clouds, dust storms, limited rain and snow, and fly through mountains without being able to see out the window. You know, you just follow some little computer games, and that's what it did.
That's amazing. What about the firepower that those things have?
Well, these were equipped with defensive armament only. It's a gun called a minigun, M134. It's an electric 6-barreled Gatling gun. Shoots about 4,000 rounds a minute, depending on the type of the gun, and shoots out to about 1,500 meters effective range. And then it also has 2 M240 machine guns, which is an older, more conventional style machine gun in the back. And yeah, we could. It also has countermeasures. So if somebody shoots surface-to-air missile at heat seekers or radar-guided missiles, there's jammers and chaff dispensers and flare dispensers.
Amazing to hear the kind of technology that was involved. I want to get into a little bit of the training that it takes to be special ops. And everyone always focuses on the physical part of it, but I want to focus on, people say that it's more important to have mental fortitude. Obviously you need the physical fortitude, but the mental fortitude is so important when you're doing special operations. You know, tell us a little bit about why the mental fortitude was so important for you and all your colleagues.
Yeah, you're right about that, you know, because when it comes to physical fitness, I mean, they expect you to be physically fit to get in, but, you know, attitude is something, the ability to think on your feet, critical thinking, you know, to think outside the box, if you will, and come up with unique ways that you can accomplish a mission that maybe nobody else would have thought to do. So you're looking for that, and then maybe a little stubbornness. I mean, most of the special operators that I know have sort of a type A personality, kind of maybe a little high strung at work, and you don't ever quit. You know, that's the thing. You know, because one of the things that we find in aircraft incidents, whether it's civilian or military, is there's a saying, never quit flying the aircraft. And because sometimes you can pull it out. You know, you might think you're going to die, and then you just keep flying it, keep trying. And sometimes, as happened to me, I was able to pull it out, you know, and other times you can't. But the attitude is very important. And, you know, I used to do, the 160th is all volunteers. There's no direct assignment. So you have to apply. And then if they select you to come to assess, you know, to try out, even that, you know, has a low percentage rate of success. But I used to do those as an instructor pilot, and I had after a couple of deployments, I really kind of figured out what I was looking for in somebody. They had to be good enough to learn to fly the aircraft, obviously. And I would take them into the simulator and show them techniques that they did not know how to do. And if they could mimic it, then okay, they're smart enough to be taught, you know. And if they kind of, ooh, oh, that's really cool, you know. If they ooh and ah at the right spot, then you know they're interested. And then just their general personality, because I would say, you know, guy flies okay, but I don't think I could live in a tent with him for 6 months, you know. And that's really important to get along with everybody. So, you know, even though we're all kind of high strung and you know, sometimes forceful in the way we do business, we all get along. You know, that hierarchy is, you know, everybody's into that.
Yeah, I think teamwork, I think you're basically summarizing what makes a great team. And I think that goes for any profession. But you in particular, you've been through some crazy life and death situations that 99% of the world never experience. How has that shaped you as a person? That has to affect the way that you live your life. Oh,
definitely. You know, so I currently am a deputy commissioner of emergency services here in Orange County, New York. And I know one of my first that we dealt with, we have an emergency operations center, and there was cars backed up on one of the interstates, and they were stuck in the snow. because of some, jacked up trucks. And I was very calm in how we'll call the state police. We'll get snowmobiles down here, pass out some gasoline, water, take anybody that has an emergency. We'll go get them. And as I was doing this, one of my employees looked at me and said, "How can you be so calm in this?" I was like, "There's no one shooting at me."
You're like, this is easy. This is easy. That's amazing.
I had the opportunity back in October of 2013 to unveil a statue down in Manhattan at Ground Zero. It's called America's Response. It was a horse soldier statue. I flew them in, and they made a movie about them. And while we were there, I had a chance to talk to now General Mulholland, who was the commander of our task force, Force Dagger. And he sat down at a little small talk while we were, waiting for another event. And he said, so, we never really got a chance to talk about how things were going there in the beginning. It was too busy. He goes, "What were you guys thinking in those early days?" And I said, "Well, honestly," I said, "we didn't expect to survive more than about 2 or 3 missions." And he's like, "What?" Amazing. No one ever told me that. And I was like, "Well, what are we're going to do it anyway." So there's no sense, squawking about it. But the other flight lead and I would go off in the back corner, and he got a hold of some bourbon from an agency guy, and they were like, "What do you think, man?" And he goes, "I don't think we're going to live, a couple hours, of flying." And
God.
just did it. But that's the mentality of the people that, we're dealing with.
It's a different perspective. And I want to ask, what was the impetus for your book? I mean, your book has been a bestseller, Razor 3, A Night Stalker's War. What made you put all of those experiences together into a book?
Well, something I wanted to do for a long time was tell our story, because you've seen, some of the highlights, right? The horse soldiers, the lone survivor, that kind of stuff. But you always hear it from the ground force perspective, because, I mean, they're the cool guys, let's face it. They're, Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 and the Rangers. So you don't hear too much about the pilots. They used to refer to us as, the taxi drivers, Taxi we're driving a $62 million aircraft into the mountains with bad weather. Yeah. But it really started when the movie Horse Soldiers came out, is when I actually decided to do it. But I was getting interviewed by another author, Jim DeFelice, who wrote the book American Sniper. And he was writing a book for the horse soldiers called Swords of Lightning, which just came out as well. But while he was interviewing me, we had small talk about these other missions I was involved in. And he said, you tell a great story. Why don't you write a book? And I was like, I don't know. But so that was kind of it, really, is just to get our story out. And, once I saw, 12 Strong, I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna put our story out there.
I mean, it's a great book. And I for anyone who hasn't read it, it's focused on Task Force Dagger, which was formed after 9/11. Tell us what this unit was, what was the purpose, and what was your role?
So almost immediately after 9/11, as in like the next day, we drove down to Tampa, Florida, which is where the SOCCENT, Special Operations Command, Central Command is, and Central Command. And we started planning for America's response in Afghanistan to support the Northern Alliance, which would help us get to Usama Bin Laden, and because he was being protected by the Taliban. So there were 2 task forces, right? So a task force is an ad hoc unit where you take different elements and you put them together under one command. So you have, the helicopters from the 160th, you have the STS, the Special Tactics guys, the PJs out of, in this case, out of Hobart Field, and then the Green Berets that would do an Unconventional Warfare campaign, or UW. And initially, we didn't know about the UW campaign. We just knew that we were going to do a bombing campaign and then see where it kind of panned out. And our responsibility from north of Afghanistan was to pick up downed airmen. So if somebody got shot down or crashed for some reason, we would go rescue them. And that was about 2 weeks worth, as they softened up, main air defense artillery and troop concentrations. And about that time, the Green Berets came in and said, "Hey, we'd like you to take us in to link up with these different factions of the Northern Alliance. And so that's our mission changed there. In 2 weeks, they held off the bombing campaign until we had the first 2 aircraft flyable. So that was a little stressful.
Now, you mentioned that you were, the book, there's a large part about hunting down Osama Bin Laden, which, from afar, you just imagine what it's like to chase the most wanted man in the world. Tell us a little bit about what that hunt was like, how you guys narrowed down where he was, and how you finally got him.
Yeah, as far as how they narrowed it down, that's the agency guys, however they did that. But we sent 2 aircraft down from K2, Karshi-Kanabad, to Bagram Air Base, which you heard about just this last summer as they withdrew. But that's the most strategic air base in the entire country. And we went there with 2 helicopters and a Delta Force contingent. And we flew them down to a main, we'll call it just a headquarters, a building. And then they would go from there up into the mountains as best they could with their Afghan allies to try to get to Bin Laden. They kind of knew where he was. He was on the radio quite a bit, and they could geolocate all that kind of stuff. And then we just brought more people, and the bombing campaign was amazing. I've never seen mountains glow like that, even to the naked eye, but under night vision goggles, the mountainside, the rocks would just stay so hot from the flames that, the only thing I've seen like that is out west here in America, where the wildfires happen in California and New Mexico, because
wow.
And you see the orange glow. That's what it looked like, And then what we would do is, after they drop all these bombs, they would go to these cave complexes that we knew of that he potentially was in, and they do searches. So we would land, right outside the cave, and the Green Berets or the Delta guys would go in, clear the cave. If there's anything in there, they would do what they call sensitive site exploitation, or SSE, and hopefully you'd find out that hey, we got him, or hey, here's some documents, or a computer that maybe give us an indication where he might be. And they did have him within rifle range. The Delta guys, a guy named Tom Greer wrote a book. He's passed away since. It was called Dalton Fury was the pen name he used. And he talks about the frustration of being literally, about to kill him. And the Afghans that brought them together didn't realize they were there to kill Bin Laden, and they turned on the Delta operators, and it was a little Mexican standoff, gun against gun.
Yeah.
They had to withdraw, and I remember I picked them up right, about an hour or 2 after that, and they were pissed.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, these stories, clearly you operate your best under pressure. And I feel like people that do special operations at that level have to perform best under pressure. In your experience, what predicts someone's ability to perform under pressure, right? Anyone can do a good job when no one's looking, when nothing's on the line. But for example, you're flying in this helicopter into the mountains where at any point in time you could be shot down and killed. How do you deal with that high pressure life and death situation, and what predicts people doing well in that situation?
Some of that is psychological testing. So remember I said that the unit is all volunteer, and I think the first week of the assessment, right? So you do a swim test, a physical fitness test, you take a general aviation knowledge test, and probably what's key to what you're asking is there's 2 psychological tests. I don't remember the names of them, but one was 600 questions and the other was like 300 questions. And these aren't really tests, as I learned, that they're more exclusionary tests, right? So they'll oh, this guy's a, child pornographer,
Yeah.
But they aren't, it's kind of like everybody's cut from the same cloth, right? Like we talked about their personalities, right? So first you get people that are of the caliber that you want, and then it's training, realistic training is where our money was made, because, the conventional forces, they have maybe a little less they're a little more risk averse, you know, when it comes to, all right, we're going to fly a helicopter. We're going to, you know, we would do things, we'll call it backside support. So people who would set up a training target and they aren't actually being trained, they're just operating it, would set fires, you know, to the landing zone. So you're landing to the top of the building in a Chinook, just at F2 gear, and, you know, there's fires everywhere. And you can't see through the goggles. The fires kind of make your goggles dim down a little bit. So you have to find other ways to look, to be able to.
God.
But the regular Army isn't going to do that. Hey, you know, I can just see it now. Hey, we're going to set fire to the landing zone when the helicopter comes in, so it's harder for them to see, and maybe they'll crash, you know. But you don't, I mean, occasionally you have accidents, but the point is the level of that training, that realism is just, it's fantastic. And you know, some of that is money, right? You know, the conventional forces might not get that same funding for fuel or for the equipment that's going to make these fires and things like that. And really some of that's called stress inoculation, right? So the idea is, you know, oh, you hear there's some term, you know, like you bleed in training so you don't die in battle or something like that. I probably butchered that, but the idea is, you know, you got to have that, you know, and it just, you get used to it. You know, it's like getting shot at. You know, we got shot at almost every night in the first 7 months of Afghanistan, and big stuff, you know, RPGs, surface to air missiles, and 23 millimeter, which was the most prevalent. And those things, you know, they're like this big around, you know, and that long, and they glow like a freaking
Wow.
size of a softball, you know, and they just kind of snake across the sky. You see it on the news every once in a while when they ship the invasion of Iraq or something. And the first couple times, it's like almost heart-stopping. And then you just get used to it. And, you know, the bullets can whiz by you. You can hear them hitting the aircraft. And it just doesn't scare you.
Wow, it's mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. I want to hear a little bit about you getting shot down during Operation Anaconda. How did you survive and how did you reach safety? Just tell us a little bit about that event.
Okay. I'm going to give you the short version, and you can ask more questions if you want. Operation Anaconda is a big conventional mission. It's called the Hammer and the Anvil, right? So we put special forces troops on top of mountains in an area that had all roads in and out of the area. And they would call for fire from fighters and bombers overhead if the enemy, you know, tried to go out. And then the hammer, essentially, so that's the anvil. The hammer, you know, that you swing down on it, is the main force to push them toward the anvil so that we could, you know, kill them. And the idea was that Bin Laden and Zawahiri were supposed to be in the area. And that's why we were involved, because it was really a conventional operation. And they asked for us to assist because of the fact, and we were interested because we thought Bin Laden was there. And so that's kind of the big battle. So I have to take these SEALs from Dam Neck to the top of a mountain called Takargar, which is key terrain in this area, this big valley. And the idea is that they will have a better view than anybody else of the entire valley to call for fire to get all the bad guys, you know, the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda fighters. Well, key terrain is key terrain for a reason. We get up there and you know, enemy fighters were already there, and they shot us down with an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade, to the side of the aircraft. Took out 3 electrical systems and 3 hydraulic systems, which is key because that's all of them. Now the engines continue to run, so I was able to fly it off the mountain. But in the process, there, a SEAL, Neil Roberts, fell out of the back, and along with one of my crew chiefs, the crew chief was on a tether, so another crew member pulled him in. And then about 50 seconds into the flight, the controls locked up because there was out of hydraulic fluid. And luckily, somebody at Boeing had thought through the fact that you could service it in flight. So there's a little can in the back, you know, for accepting hydraulic fluid. And we had 3 cans of hydraulic fluid in the back that require a can opener to open. You know, the old-fashioned, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and they pour it in there, and then the crew chief would pump it, and the handle's like this big, you know, so he's moving it like this fast, you know, trying to pump it. And the controls came back, and we'd have about 50 seconds per can of fluid, and we didn't realize that, and we tried to turn back in to go pick up Neil Roberts, and then the controls locked up again, and then we realized that we just weren't going to be able to do that.
Oh man.
Yeah. So we turned back to the left, added some more fluid, and started a slow descent, trying to make it to friendly positions that we could see down below us. And the rate of descent and the speed I used was such that I figured maybe if they locked up again on us, I might hit the ground in a survivable, you know, rate of descent and speed, you know, assuming we didn't hit trees or anything. And we ran out of fluid one last time, about 30 feet off the ground, and the aircraft actually started to slide to the right, and I could not, you know, move the controls back to the left to stop that slide. And had we continued it in that direction, the aircraft would have rolled over and exploded. And this is where I say never quit flying the airplane. So then I pushed on the pedals in the direction that I needed to go, and the nose kind of swung around in the direction of the drift, and we actually hit the ground straight forward and then settled. And so the aircraft, it was really more of a hard landing than a crash. And then we shut down the aircraft. We set up the perimeter. My wingman, who had gone to a separate landing zone, was waiting for me at an aerial rendezvous. When I didn't show up after 15 minutes, he started a search and came and got us. It took about 45. So I was on the ground about 45 minutes with the SEALs. And then he took them back to the top of the mountain, dropped us off at a forward operating base. And then that's a whole different story for, you know, Razor 1. You know,
That's unbelievable. I mean, just the fact, like you were saying, fly the aircraft until the very last moment, and had you even hesitated for a second, it's going to roll over and explode. So unbelievable thinking under pressure. I mean, was your life flashing before your eyes? I'm assuming.
No, I was busy. You know, when the very first time the controls stopped moving, I remember like a feeling of just dread that I had let everybody down, you know, and I apologized to the guys. I'm like, hey guys, I'm sorry. We're done. There's nothing left to do. And then I have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, with no hydraulics and no control, who knows what the aircraft is going to do. And, you know, my co-pilot tried to move the controls. I think we bent them, you know, trying to move them.
Yeah.
But, you know, when the controls came back, I just remember thinking, okay, we've still got a chance. And that's why, you know, I tried to go back for Roberts. And that's without any guns, you know, functioning.
God.
But, you know, I remember when I got on the ground, I just remember we used to do this training. My commander, his name was Joe Gorst, and he used to do this thing called Gorst games, right? I talk about, you know, this training, and we used to do these downed aircraft drills where you'd, you know, get it on the ground, and then you'd zero everything out, destroy the computers and things like that. And I got on the ground and said, damn, not another Gorst game. And then we just went through it. I actually got I don't know, call it an award, a certificate and a coin from the NSA, because they had found out that I had disabled everything the way I'm supposed to. You know, you know, you got this destruct sequence, you know, for the computer. That, you know, I took the time to do it, and I did that because once again in training, you know, I did this survival and evasion course. There's two of them in the Army. One is high risk of capture. They beat you up a little bit, like in the movies. And the other one is a more advanced peacetime governmental detention, and it's a little more subtle. And they talked about there was a Navy P-3 that bumped into a Chinese airplane many years ago, and they ended up landing in China. Well, they never disabled their codes. You know, they were afraid to do that. You know, and I wasn't going to be the guy, you know, they were talking about in class. Yeah, the Chinook guy, he didn't do any of this stuff.
Yeah. So, everyone knows about Lone Survivor. Everyone's heard about Marcus Luttrell and that incredible story and movie that was done about it. So you were the one who picked him up in the Kunar Valley? Is that?
There was an Air Force HH-60, so it was a Black Hawk, did the actual pickup. I was responsible for the entire plan of the operation and the sequencing. So as they went in to get him, as they came out, we came in with more troops because we still had people that were unaccounted for. Yeah, that's a whole.
I mean, tell us how dangerous that is. I mean, anyone who's seen the movie knows that they shot down a helicopter that was trying to rescue them. So you're going into such a hot zone. The risks there of getting shot down, just kind of go through your mentality.
Well, I can tell you, I honestly think that is the toughest flying I've done in my entire career. There were 3 ways in, 3 valleys, 3 draws that would bring you into the Kunar. And one of them was perpetually cloud shrouded, right? So the only way to get through would be the MH-47s with the radar, which is what we had. We only had 2 of those. And the other 7 Chinooks that we had were Delta models, so an older version of the aircraft. So, and that was the one that got shot down, was a Delta. So that left 2 ways in and out because I couldn't drag the other aircraft through the clouds. So the enemy knows, they fought the Soviets and, their helicopters, and they know the elevation is a big deal. So all they have to do is orient their weapons, these 2 valleys, and as soon as you fly in, they got you dead to rights, and there's nothing you can do. There's no room to maneuver. And the rules of engagement didn't allow us to kill just anybody. If you saw somebody on a heat signature, you couldn't just, engage them. They had to sort of shoot at you first. And unfortunately, at close range like that, they're gonna get you, And so what we ended up having to do was, especially with the Luttrell rescue, was that we had to sequence the fires in a way that what I asked them to do was to hit key terrain on the way in where I knew somebody could get us, if they were there. And as we come in, like a minute out, you lift the fire, so you stop shooting the AC-130, which is shooting 40 millimeter and 105 rounds, right? Big stuff. And then shift that fire to a ridge line where, that key terrain could see it. And then they would drop 500,000 pound bombs to make a diversion. So the idea was to draw their attention, while you slip by, and then you shift the fire back to the key positions to cover you. And so that was all my doing. And probably the best. It's like a little bit of artwork, if you will. That's probably my best operation as far as complexity and getting everybody to do what they're supposed to do with no hiccups at all. I mean, everybody did.
The story is incredible.
Yeah, I actually, when we left, I left country a couple of weeks after that, and one of my crew chiefs was a junior guy. I didn't talk to him very much because he was a junior guy, but he came back with me. So we stopped in Amsterdam, and I bought him a beer, and he's like, "Hey, sir, can I tell you something?" He goes, "I was scared to death." He goes, "I don't know how you did it." And I was like, "I was scared." I said, "Yeah, you're wrong." He goes, "Yeah, but you didn't give us any indication you were scared." And that's part of that, just staying cool under pressure. I said, "I was scared." And, it was nice to hear, a little bit of, hey, I actually, came across the way I intended.
That's the sign of a true leader. And I kind of want to ask you, now that you went from a job where your life is in danger every single moment of the day, now you're back in the real world with the rest of us, what's your next challenge? Like where do you go from here? I mean, how do you get your excitement, your challenges? I mean, that's obviously something that you thrive off of.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I did skydiving for a little while. My last 3 years in the Army, I was at West Point flying the general around and the skydiving team. So the cadets were amazing. I love working with the skydiving cadets. And they actually convinced me to skydive. And so the cadre taught me how to skydive, and then the cadets coached me. and to the point I got my license, and then, you know, a couple of upgrades, and that was amazing. You know, like, I don't fly anymore. You know, people ask me all the time, you know, do you miss flying? And it's like, no, I don't really miss flying. I miss the people, and I miss the mission. I mean, there's something to be said, you know, landing a 50-foot helicopter next to a building, you know, and that, you know, there's bad guys, and when the bullets start flying, you know, that's pretty exciting and exhilarating, really.
What would you say, you know, something that's made you so great in your career is your ability to be a leader. Do you feel like leadership is taught, or you're born that way?
I think both, because I've had leaders who have influenced me in the way that I treat people or the way that I look at things. There were some guys that I wanted to be like them, you know, and I couldn't be. I didn't have the personality, you know. Some of my favorite flight leads were guys that could stay not just calm in the aircraft. I was that, but in the planning area, when you're coming up with a plan and you're butting heads with the ground force, you know, or other pilots on how you're going to do things, you know, these guys could just stay calm and just talk like I am right now. Like, I really don't think that's a good idea, you know, and I'd be like, you know, this is the way we're going to do it. So, you know, that is, it does. I mean, there's leadership schools, and we did things with the air mission commanders, you know, young captains, teaching them how to lead, you know, from the front, you know, they're in the lead cockpit. And so a lot of it's taught, but boy, you know, you can tell when somebody's a natural, you know. One of the things I always say about the Army, the military really in general, is all it takes to succeed, like just to be successful, is a good attitude and a good work ethic. And the reason being is, if you got a good attitude and you're not good at your job, people will give you the time to learn it. They'll help you train, right? And then that good work ethic, same thing. They're going to notice that, and you're going to get better at your job if you weren't good at it to begin with. And then you add a little bit of talent or a little extra drive, and you just go right to the top, you know?
I mean, those are good lessons for life. I think anyone will tell you that work ethic always trumps ability. If you got both of them, that's when you're, you know, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady level. But if you just have just the work ethic and the attitude, that's like 90% of the battle. Listen, Alan, I could talk to you all day. I just want to say, you know, celebrate Veterans Day. It's a pleasure to speak to you today, especially considering that it is Veterans Day. And the fact that your career is not only a reflection on your great abilities, but also all the members of the armed forces who protect this country. Such a blessing to have you on this interview. Such a blessing to have you guys protect this country. And, you know, God bless America. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really had fun.
Absolutely, Alan. Take care. Have a great weekend.